Hello, humans. I am your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business. I talk with sales and HR experts, other small business owners, and anyone else that can provide you with information to clear your way to success. My guest today is Billy Cramer, owner of Cramer Clay. Billy grew up with parents that were potters. He spent nearly 20 years in the restaurant industry before his parents convinced him to get back into ceramics as a side hustle. He's been creating functionally elegant pottery built for daily use since then. His work is awesome. I got some things from him recently, and it's all super dope. Billy is a fellow disc golfer, slinger of delicious tacos, and he's just one of those people that is he's just a joy to be around. Billy, thank you for being a guest on Clearing the Way.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I covered it a little bit in the intro. Parents, potters. Where did you grow up? Are you from around here? I know you moved.
I grew up in Northern California. I was born in Nevada.
Okay.
We lived in Lake Tahoe, and then we moved before I was 1 to the small town of Cottonwood, California, which is about 2 hours north of Sacramento.
Okay. How long were you there?
I was in Northern California until second grade, where we moved down to Southern California, where I spent the majority of my growing up years. All my adolescent years were in Southern California.
Okay. What were your parents doing? Like, why did you guys keep bouncing around?
So by the time I showed up in the family, my parents were at the point of starting a church. My father was a minister or becoming a minister.
Okay.
And so they had just started a church. Really, my first memories are of like the church happening in houses, and then we moved into a building. And so my youth, up until high school, I was a minister's son and a frequenter of church and youth group and all of those fun things.
Okay. So that led you to move a couple times. When you were so through high school, was that still the case? How long did they do that?
So it went until I was in 8th grade, so just before high school, and things happened, and my father wanted to take a year's sabbatical from being a minister and got back into pottery. And that was really my first realization that my parents were talented potters. I had grown up in a house with amazing pottery, and I'd always known that they did pottery before I was around, but it was, I'm a little kid, and it was before me, so it was kind of before my scope.
Did they do anything, up to that point, had you ever seen them making anything, or was it kind of like
My father had taken a glass blowing class.
Okay.
One semester type of a thing, and he came home with glass vases. Also very beautiful pieces of art, But I didn't fully grasp it. I'd never seen them do it.
Okay.
Until the time that they decided to stop being the minister and his wife of a church and get back into pottery.
Okay. And so then they were doing that full time at that point?
It went full time. I mean, it went from this to that. I mean, it was a turn. We got a gigantic kiln in our backyard. He got a potter's wheel. He started in the garage and then turned this huge gazebo. We were in Southern California, so there weren't weather issues.
Yeah.
And he turned this huge gazebo into a studio and taught me how to make pottery. I mean, it was amazing because he instantly was making beautiful pottery that I had never seen him do. So here's the skill set that I had never seen and got to learn. So I was 14, 15 at the time. Okay,
that's cool. So when you're in school, were you doing any other activity? Like, what were you into? I played
baseball. Was my jam. I mean, I played baseball. From the time I could hold a baseball, there was a baseball in my hand. I liked to throw it. I liked to hit them. So that was my life, really, even through high school.
Yeah. Any other activities that you were involved in, or just?
Not much. I mean, the church was a major player of time in my life.
Yeah.
And my family's life. So I had, Sundays were kind of taken.
Yeah.
And then the older I got, you get into those youth groups. So there were Wednesday nights or Thursday nights, and then other meetings that were going on. And so I was always, that was my other life. There was school, there was baseball, and there was church.
Okay. So, so through high school, you're starting to like you're introduced to this new pottery thing, which is like, okay, that's cool. Were you super interested in that, or was it just kind of something like were you just kind of soaking it in a little bit, or
I was interested in it. I wanted to do it like anybody who watches someone throw a pot. You're like,
it's
oh, I
cool.
want to do that. That's really cool. So he taught me and I learned right away and I took to it pretty quickly. I also, I mean, I had a ceramic studio in my garage, so I could
Yeah.
do it more than the average human being.
Yeah.
And then I had some rules set forward. Like I wasn't allowed to keep a piece of pottery until I had made 100 pots. So every night I'd go out into the garage and I'd throw a pot and then I'd crumble it back down and wedge it into a ball and make another one. And I just had this running count of how to throw pots because you start keeping the bad ones and before you know it, you've got a room full of junk.
Okay, so that's what were there any other rules? Like that feels like a really cool thing to.
Yeah, that was the only rule.
Okay.
You know, I had a bag of clay. And because I wasn't keeping them, once they were made, I just crumbled them back down into that bag of clay.
Yeah.
So I used the same 25 pounds of clay for, several weeks before I finally got to the point that I'd made 100 pots and could then start keeping them, putting them in the kiln and taking space because that was their only job. And when they were just starting out for the second time, they were still getting going. So every inch in that kiln was a valuable space.
Yeah. Okay, so did they have any... Okay, so he... they had the churches. Did they have any other business experience before then?
I mean, he ran a successful pottery business prior to getting into the ministry.
Okay, so they had a pottery business, ministry, then back into pottery.
Exactly.
Okay, so he knew this wasn't like I'm good at this, let me try it. It was like, I know how to...
I've done this before. Let's go ahead and do it. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, and on the business side, did you pick up or did you see any of that, or was it did you kind of just get a taste of the making, like the creation side?
I was the creation side that I got the majority of my kind of influence from them from. They run their business the way they do, and I wasn't involved in that. You know, I sold things. I would do shows occasionally with them, and I would be there doing the sales, but I wasn't looking up for places to sell my pottery. I wasn't, conscious of the cost of the product before the benefits of it, and so it was nothing. I didn't really learn much business.
Yeah. Did you enjoy going and like helping them sell things then?
I always have. I really enjoy being around people, and that was strangers coming to talk to. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so out of school or in high school, did you know what you were like? What did you plan on doing after school, and what did you do? What was your kind of...
My plan, being a baseball player, was to probably go to school and become a teacher so that I could coach baseball and be a teacher.
Yeah.
You marry another teacher and you get summers off and you have kind of similar lives and weekends off and so that was kind of a rough plan.
Okay.
And then I got out of high school and I was playing baseball at a junior college, but just kind of, I was young and wasn't necessarily playing a lot at that point. And ended up getting a job in a restaurant.
Okay.
And I always loved food, but I really realized that being around food and alcohol was something that really drove me. I loved learning about it. I loved delicious things. And I loved the service industry. I like supplying someone with a good time and kind of giving them that.
Okay. At that point, what kind of restaurants were you working in?
The first restaurant I started at was just a pizza place.
Okay.
Slinging pizzas, working the counter. I ended up, closing the place as a closing manager some nights.
Okay.
But really just kind of high school kids running around doing those jobs. And then I left that and went to a more of a finer dining. It was called the UCLA Convention Center, and it's up in Lake Arrowhead, nowhere near the UCLA, but on a mountain, on a lake. And in the summertime, it's a summer camp for UCLA alumni. In the wintertime, it's a convention center for whatever business wants to have kind of a weekend getaway for that type of thing. So I learned from a gentleman that 4-star quality of service of not having your hands in your pockets, not speaking, learning about food, knowing the pace of dining. And then from there, I went and worked at an Italian place in Southern California.
What were you doing at those restaurants?
Like serving tables.
Okay.
Was really my gig.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, I imagine like you enjoy like okay, so you're in this restaurant environment. At what point did you leave school? Did you leave the junior college?
I left the junior college within the first semester
Oh
or a
wow.
year. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't do much of that.
Okay.
I didn't like going to class. I liked playing baseball, and that was really the only thing
Okay.
getting me
So
there.
in high school were you the same way, like didn't really enjoy the school
Yeah,
part?
I mean,
Okay.
I enjoy learning, and I always did well. I'm the guy that tests well and
Yeah.
didn't do a day of homework.
Okay.
You
Okay,
know,
that makes
I
sense.
found out that I could take 2 physical education classes and get 2 A's and get 4 D's and still have a 2.0 so I could play sports.
Okay. Okay.
And it drove my teachers nuts because I would interact with class because I love
Yeah.
learning and talking. I just wasn't doing
Yeah.
anything at home. I was playing baseball and then
Yeah.
cooking probably.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're starting at these restaurants, was there any desire to, at first you were just serving, did you want to cook at all?
I always loved cooking, and I'd heard people say, don't do it for your career, you'll hate it.
Okay. That makes a lot of
You
sense.
know, and when I've since working 20 years in the restaurant industry, I see what they mean. Working the line in a restaurant is a horrible job, you know. Once you finally get into that next position, even that's a horrible job, but you get a little bit more show, you know.
Okay.
So it's a tough industry to be in, you know.
Yeah.
Serving people every day is a
Yeah.
deep thing. And so I was grateful to be on the other side. It made good money. I could do what I wanted outside of working, and I just had to show up and be
Yeah.
me.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds nice. Okay, so you are at a couple of these restaurants. So after UCLA, where were you at?
Then I was down in Los Angeles County at a small family-run Italian restaurant.
How did you what led to that?
A friend was living down there and working at the restaurant.
Okay.
And I was down hanging out with him in the afternoon. And he's like, I got to go to work. We need someone at this job. You should come see if you can get hired. And I was like, yeah.
Were you still working up at the other?
Oh, yeah. Lived
Okay.
an hour away.
Okay.
Working at the other place.
Okay.
And walked in, got hired. You know, a little 15-minute interview with the owner. And then bust tables that night and made $100 and was like, this is fantastic.
Okay.
You know, called my parents. They were pissed off, wondering where I was, you know, pre-cell phone. You know, where are you? Why is it so late? I'm like, oh, I got a job. I made a bunch of money. I'll be home tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
And so that really started the whole thing. And then I moved from my parents' house down to that area in Los Angeles County. And
Okay.
that was the start of my restaurant career in kind of the way I see it.
Okay. Okay. So how long were you at that job?
I was there for a little over a year, and then I moved over to the macaroni grill, and I did that for a couple years, and then I moved from California to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
That was another, my best friend from high school, his uncle lived in D.C., and that was 2004, so the economy was just starting to tip, and jobs were getting to be harder to find. And so my buddy's uncle was like, move to D.C., get a job with the government, you'll have benefits, you'll have a job for the rest of your life, things will work out for you.
Okay.
So he moved out there, and in 6 months, you know, I decided I was going to move to D.C. for a year just to see what it was like.
Okay.
And
no job or anything, just headed out there.
Yeah.
And
well, I was working at the macaroni
there.
grill, and I had a good reputation there, so I could get into a macaroni grill in Northern Virginia. And I did work at that one for maybe a month or two.
Yeah, good.
And not even a month or two, a week or two. And then I got hired at a high-end steakhouse in Washington, D.C., where lobbyists are lobbying, where senators are getting lobbied. I mean, big time people, big time money being spent. And that's when I started to learn about expensive food and expensive alcohol and why it was better to sell those to people.
Yeah. Okay, so that whole time, you were just into the restaurant game at that point? Like, that was your jam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Showing up in the afternoon, working till midnight, having some drinks with friends afterwards, sleeping until 10 the next morning.
Okay. And were you... Okay. Okay, so, I mean, that seems just like a fun lifestyle.
It is. But 20 years later, all of a sudden you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Okay, so you're there. Did you stay on this, like, the serving side the whole time?
I bounced around. I got out of serving and was bartending at a little dive bar for a little while, but that was probably killing me because I was imbibing with the customers a little more than I probably should have been. And then I left and went back to a restaurant where someone else was working and became a manager of that restaurant. And I managed a couple restaurants and realized that they didn't pay me well enough to spend my life in someone else's establishment. So I went back to waiting tables.
Okay.
Which gave me a lot of hours back in my life and a raise.
Huh. Okay, so management, not the thing.
Unfortunately, in that industry, it's not, you know, unless you're a part of, you have owner sides to it. But, you know, because I was making tips. So they, you know, the owner wasn't paying me very much. He was paying the manager more. Yeah. But at the end of the night, I was walking away with more money.
Yeah. Okay, so so you bounce around. Did you have a okay, so you have a couple of these, like, fine dining places. Did you try to get more of those, or, like, what was leading to bouncing to different things?
Usually a change in life is what got me to move to a different restaurant. Once I found one, I kind of stuck with it. Yeah. And so I was managing a restaurant, and someone I knew called me and asked me if I had any servers that I could suggest to go work at their restaurant. And I was like, well, you hire me. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I want to leave my job and I will come wait tables in your restaurant, which was a seafood place, the freshest seafood I've ever seen in my life, right on the, you know, right in DC. And so he hired me. And so that was the end of my managing career. And I was officially a server for the rest of my career at that point. Okay.
And then from there, were you still bouncing between restaurants, or, like, were you, like what was, because I get the same way with, like, I get bored with things, but I'm wondering, like, what is it for you that's the trigger that's like, hey, let's try something new now, or even if it, same industry, same everything, just, like, new place. Like, what were some of the things that lead you to know, okay, or to just want to move on to whatever that next thing is?
Yeah, in a restaurant, there's a lot of little things that maybe aren't bothersome to the average person, but then you add them up, and it starts to just weigh on your kind of your daily life. You know, the way a manager talks to you, the way customers expect this, the way someone can't order something, so I don't have this, or the wine list has 40 bottles, but we only really have 15 of them. Like, it's embarrassing to stand in front of someone, for me as a waiter, and give them a list of things and then be like, well, I don't have that, and I don't have that. So as those things would build up, you'd start to kind of look for another gig. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
And a lot of times, I mean, the funny thing was it was always in the restaurant that I was leaving was where I got the other gig. You know, like I was waiting on a table and a friend that I'd known for years goes, we're hiring, come work at such and such a restaurant. And he backs out of his seat. He's like, this is what I'm going to wear to work tonight. And I'm standing there in a bow tie and a vest and pants. And I'm like, you know, I'll come check it out. Had an interview, got hired, and wore T-shirts and jeans for the next 2.5 years.
Okay, so you're bouncing between a couple of those. At any point, you still know clay at this point? Like, you're completely out of it?
Yeah, I hadn't touched it since high school. I mean, 2 times in the 20 years from high school to when I got back into it did I actually throw pots. And that was because I was home and my parents, and I'm going to go make a pot. And so I would do that. But yeah, not around it, not talking about it, not involved in it.
Did you have any, like, obviously you did it a couple, I mean, I guess literally 2 in 20 years. Like, that's not a lot.
Right.
That's not a lot. But had you thought about it at all, or is it just like this old thing that you used to do?
Yeah, it was just something that I had learned. I knew how to do. If I had the opportunity to do it again, I would probably be decent at it because I had the skill set.
Okay.
But it was never like I want a studio, or I want a place where I can do this. Like, that was never a drive.
Okay. So you're in the restaurants. Had you at that point had you considered getting out of that at all yet? Or was it just like, was there any long-term thinking, or was it just like, I'm good with where I'm at now? Like, I'm continuing, I'm doing all this.
Well, it was what I wanted to do was sell tacos. And so my plan was to slowly convert from working in a restaurant to maybe doing weekend street fairs and selling tacos and kind of a taco cart type of thing, or maybe even a food truck. But it was just a quiet plan. I wasn't saving. I wasn't really dedicated to it. But that was kind of a point that I would like to have gotten to.
Okay, and was that why tacos?
I love tacos.
They're so good.
They're amazing food. I think I love them. Well, when I moved from Southern California to Washington, D.C., the ability to get the Mexican food that I was after disappeared.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn how to make it.
Okay.
And that's kind of what drove me to make tacos. And then they're always just a great party food. And then spending 20 years in the restaurant industry, like, you're throwing a party for whoever's walking into your section each night.
Yeah.
So I like...
That's an interesting way of thinking about it.
To create that positive environment. I want people to be comfortable. I want to give them what they're looking for and maybe teach them about some food that they didn't know they were looking for. And so tacos kind of fit that really well.
Huh.
And they're a street food that I felt like I could get into without needing a clean restroom or a dishwasher or all of the things that make a restaurant tough to run.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of like, you want to do that. Did you ever start making any strides toward that? Or was it always kind of this like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to do this?
I have a couple menus written out that I had worked on, and some like structured recipes so that items can be replicated on a bigger basis. Was about as far as I got. You know. Spent some time working on it, kind of had a game plan, and was moving forward, really planning on doing this until I got convinced to get into clay.
Okay.
I mean, if I hadn't gotten into clay, I'd probably be frying tortillas somewhere.
Huh. Okay, so how long did you want to do the taco?
I mean,
something.
I've cooked my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my mother taught me to cook breakfast when I was young. And so my father would always ask me, are you going to have a restaurant one day? Are you going to have, And so that's always been in the back of my mind. Like, I should do this. Like, this is what I love. This is what I'm into. And so it was something that was always there. But again, I was making a living, working my job, and I wasn't too focused on moving further.
Okay, so you had finally started to make that, not the leap, but like you were starting to move or thinking like, okay, now you're starting to move towards that. How did you get convinced out of that? If that was this long-term, like, because you hadn't really been thinking about clay at all.
No.
How in the world did you get convinced?
Yeah. So that was So my parents, with their pottery, they used to travel around all over the place and specialized in ceramic fountains and like big table fountains, tiered things with pumps and so very, very cool. I mean, the judgment of my pottery is based on the pottery that my parents made, and they made amazing stuff. And so let me restart this. Yeah. My oldest sister, who has since passed of cancer, got diagnosed with cancer.
Okay.
She lived in Indianapolis, Indiana at the time. My parents stopped their ceramic business cold turkey and moved to Indianapolis to be with my sister.
Okay.
And we were there for a little over a year.
Okay.
And then she passed, they moved back, and as my father says, I walked into my studio and it was ready to roll. I mean, there were pots that were halfway made that just needed to be finished, and like they just turned off the lights and walked away. And so when they came back, they had spent a year away from it, and they were grinding hard. They were taking a trailer all the way up to, into Colorado, into Utah, into Wyoming, doing art shows, high-end art shows with their pottery, but being away from the house. And pottery's is heavy. The older you get, the heavier it seems. And that grind was just starting to kind of take a toll on them.
Okay.
And so they wanted to bring it back to a smaller kind of basis. And they lived just down the street from Joshua Tree National Park.
Okay.
So they went to the shop there and offered to make ceramic mugs and little plates and dishes and with a logo stamped into them. And that kind of started off slowly, but it had built up to being a great monthly business during the busy times of the. I mean, to this day, I'll get people that see the Cramer on the bottom of my parents' mugs that they bought at that state park. And broke, and were like, "Can you make me one of these?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't make the first one, and it's this."
That's cool.
I actually have the stamps, so I now can make them. I have yet to make one for them, but that's
cool.
It's one of those things. So, in that process, they realized these state parks are a good source of income.
Okay.
And I had just moved to Colorado, and
for a different. You just got pulled into that again.
My wife and I had gotten engaged. We started dating, and we were in Washington, D.C., and she had worked for the same company for 13 or 14 years. Maybe not that long. I'm not the best with her life. It was before me. But she got to the point where she kind of wanted to quit her job and maybe look for a different job.
Okay.
And she came to the realization that she didn't need to stay in D.C. anymore. She could go anywhere. So one night she asked me, "What do you think about moving? What do you think about Pittsburgh or Denver?" My response was, "When are we moving to Denver?"
Well, why were those two the ones on the list?
She had come up with them for a reason. I don't really know. I mean, well, I do know. She had gotten accepted into college in Boulder years and years prior, and always had this desire to live in Colorado.
Okay.
Check it out, see what it was about. So that's why that was there. Pittsburgh was close enough to her family, but was still a city that was affordable. She's really into home building and building greenhouses. And Pittsburgh has some of the largest collections, if not the largest collection of green buildings in the United States. Don't quote me on these things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of green going on in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Which, because of all of the bad and the steel that was here, there's been a really big influx of we need to get this fixed. And so it's really driven that point here. And so she loves that stuff. She wants to be green. She wants to build green homes. I mean, and she wants to use old houses. Like, building a new house is very wasteful for the environment. Using an old house and making it better is a lot better for the environment. Yeah. So it was kind of
that makes sense then.
A great place to be on that level.
Yeah.
So we moved to Denver. And while there was, it was actually during the eclipse that came across in August of 17. Yeah. My parents drove out from California to come see the eclipse. So we all got in the car and drove to Wyoming to get under the totality of the eclipse. And in that car ride, my father just constantly talking about selling these things. And look, there's another state park in Colorado, and here's a national park in Colorado. You might want to consider doing this. It's a good side hustle. And 2 weeks later, I bought from some guy on Craigslist a little tiny kiln that I figured I could fit, 300 magnets in. And it was a horrible kiln. I can't imagine. I'm amazed that it even worked. But I started firing pots in that, and then kind of got into it. And my mom was on her way out, so she wasn't throwing pottery anymore, and they had an extra wheel. And I coincidentally had friends driving from California back to Colorado, and they stopped at my parents' house and picked up a potter's wheel. And so in June, the 1st of June 2018 was when I started throwing pots again on a potter's wheel.
Huh. Okay.
So all that ties that into.
Yeah. Okay. So they're able to just, you've got this drive and you're just able to be like, that idea seemed more enticing. Well, okay. So at that point, had you abandoned the taco?
I hadn't abandoned it.
Okay.
But I hadn't really moved forward. I was talking to people. I was working with people that were doing like lemonade at shows and things, and I was kind of starting to pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
That was the plan. We moved to Denver in April of 2017. And so this was August of 2017. So the plan when I got to Denver was that I was going to try to transfer out of restaurants and into taco sales.
Okay.
And so I was really at the
Still at the
start,
beginning,
the very beginning, just kind of working things out, figuring out where I was going to do it, what I was going to do. I was going to try to start with a vegetarian taco, and kind of lean in that direction. I feel like that's kind of being from California, there's a lot of vegetarians in my life, and so I felt like that was a good way to get my door in, get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then move into those other tacos type of a thing.
Okay.
But really, I mean, I had a lot of ideas. None of them were ever dialed in and sent into a direction.
Okay, so you move there, you're still in the restaurants, you've kind of got this idea that you're in the research, like you're figuring out how it can work, and now you're also doing some ceramics on the side.
Yeah, rolling out on my kitchen counter. I mean, I started in the kitchen. I had to roll it all out and then clean it all up before my wife got home. It was like it was an interesting thing.
Messy.
It was tough. And she quickly convinced me to get a studio somewhere.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so how quickly did that move from side thing to like, I kind of want this to be, I want to do this?
So it was up until March 13th, 2020, it was just a side hustle thing.
Okay.
There was really not much drive. I was trying to get better at it. And then on March 13th, I lost my job in a restaurant.
Were you still in Colorado?
Still in Colorado.
Okay.
And so I was, we were actually we had a trip to Kansas City. And on our way to Kansas City, things started getting closed. The concert we were going to was canceled. And
what show were you going to?
We were going to Bob Weir and Wolf Brothers.
Okay.
And that got canceled. And then we're like, oh, the Negro League Baseball Museum is in Kansas City. We'll go there. That got closed. And that's connected to the Jazz Museum, which also got closed. And so we ended up sitting in our Airbnb with our friend that lives in St. Louis playing cards and drinking for an entire weekend because everything was closed.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad weekend. Definitely not the one you had planned. But
not planned, but it was also that first weekend of COVID. So it was like a very surreal situation, right? Nobody around us was sick.
Yeah.
We really didn't know if people were going to get sick.
Yeah.
It was just this like...
Yeah, what's going on?
We've been forced to stop.
Yeah.
Now what do we do? And so my mind was, I'm going to move, we're going to go back to Denver, and I'm just going to start making videos and try to sell pottery online.
Okay. You were going to start making videos. Do you have any, just regular,
Yeah,
okay.
Instagram viral videos, which is all that I make. I'm not as techie as some in this world, and so it was what I could do from my phone, which is really the extent of what, I just recently got a GoPro and a laptop computer, and now I'm feeling so more advanced.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the plan. Go back
and try to make this a full-time thing.
Okay.
And then on our drive back from Kansas, the gentleman I had moved into a warehouse from my other studio. This guy was like, move into my warehouse. He had a CBD hemp seed, 10,000 square foot warehouse, and he wasn't around all the time. He's like, I'd prefer someone to be here just to kind of check things out for me when I'm out of town. So you can have this corner rent-free and do whatever you want.
Okay.
So I had just moved in before we left for the concert weekend. So on the way back, I'm like, I've got this space. It's going to be wonderful. On the way back, I talked to him. He's like, the world's ending. I'm gotten out of my lease. I'm packing everything up and moving to Missoula, Montana.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay. So I don't have a studio. I don't have a job.
No. Oh, no. Okay.
So then he offered me a job to move all of his things to Missoula, Montana. So I drove a 26-foot box truck packed with farming equipment, hemp seed separating equipment, twice to Missoula that first month in April, or March and April of 2020.
Okay. Okay. That you're in an interesting spot to start. So now your side hustle thing, you're back to home.
Yeah, my stuff's in a storage container.
Okay.
And I'm a truck driver for a couple weeks.
Okay. So what were you what were you thinking? Like, what the hell were you thinking at that point?
He offered us, my wife and I, because she didn't have a job at the time. And so he's like, move to Missoula. I'll hire you. And you can help me separate the seeds from the holes, and we'll sell seeds to these farms. And that's how it'll go.
Okay.
And so we were like, our life doesn't exist here. He's got enough income for us to get by. Who knows what this COVID thing is going to bring? Sure, we'll do that. So we drive all of his stuff up there, and I was going to then put my studio in his warehouse up there and make pottery. And fortunately, I did not move my studio stuff up there because the second trip we were up there, things kind of fell apart with him.
Okay.
And we drove back to Denver, and it was like, now what do we do?
This episode is brought to you by the City of Washington, Citywide Development Corporation. If you're a small business in Washington and you need another set of eyes on your situation, or you need help growing, you're not sure what's going on with the business, you can't figure out how to get out of the current struggles you're going through, you're just looking for ways to become a little bit more efficient, anything else like that, or if you don't know where to go next, you don't know who to find to fix whatever the problem is, reach out. The WCDC is a free resource. We're here to help. The links are down below. Reach out. Like I said, it's a free resource. Now back to the episode. Okay.
And that was when we decided to move to Pittsburgh.
What industry is your wife in?
She has her own consulting company, and she consults with home builders.
Okay.
And
is that what she's been doing, since that, when you guys were moving, she's still doing that then,
she was doing that. Similar? She had started that company, and then she had gotten into a program that helped educate workers for home building companies.
Okay.
You'll have to forgive me because I'm not so enthusiastic about home building, but it was a very major company that needed employees.
Okay.
And so they created a courses that they could take and learn how to frame, learn how to estimate, learn how to do all of the things they needed, and then get them right into jobs. It was a pretty cool thing.
Okay.
And so she was into that, but it wasn't, the greatest thing in the world, and she wasn't sold on it and wanted to do a little bit more building of her own. I mean, she really likes to work on blueprints and see things go. So it's always been that. I mean, she's always been... Yeah. She's a LEED certified construction expert.
So both of you at that time, you don't know what you're going to do. So now back to moving.
Right.
We're getting out of here, I guess.
Well, we're in Denver, and the cost of living in Denver had been on its way up since prior to us moving to town.
Yeah.
And we had already known the fall of 19, her grandmother had gotten sick. And not being able to get back home quickly was really tough on my wife.
Okay.
And so we had agreed that we were going to spend one more year in Colorado doing all of the concerts at Red Rocks and all of the bands we wanted to see and ski as much as we could during the winter. And then in 21, we were going to move to Pittsburgh.
Okay. So this just got expedited a little bit.
Exactly. It was April of 20. And it's like, well, we can't do anything here. There's no concerts.
Yeah.
All of the things we're here to do don't exist right now.
Yeah. It's just expensive.
Yeah. We should go where it's cheaper.
Huh. Okay. So you move back. You're planning on moving back. What were you going to do for work? Like, what were you going to do?
Pottery.
Okay.
That was the plan.
You were just I'm fully into pottery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the world was still closed.
Yeah.
I mean, prior to COVID, my mind, I could always get a job in a restaurant, no matter where we went in the world.
Yeah.
I know that game.
Yeah.
Top to bottom. I can wash dishes. I can shake cocktails. Like, it doesn't matter.
And that's all gone.
And then that stopped.
Yeah.
It was like, it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my God.
Especially on the level that I was at.
Yeah.
You know, I was working in places that corporations bring other,
Yeah.
It wasn't people spending their own money. It was people spending their company's money.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to buy a $75 steak.
Yeah.
And top it with $40 worth of crab meat or lobster meat, It's just, and those restaurants didn't exist. So now I'm looking at like, oh, I've got to go to this bagel shop and work there, which I really didn't want to do. And so the pottery thing took front seat.
So when you're moving back here, you're moving here with that in mind. Okay, so you decide to move and you're deciding we're moving and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's a lot. That's a lot. So how did you how in the world did you make that work? That is so crazy. Like moving to a brand new area. None of you really had any connections here, right?
No, I mean, there's one family in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
He and my wife worked together 10 years ago in D.C. And they've maintained a friendship. I had stayed in their house prior to that.
Okay.
And so we knew them.
But one family here, and you're now middle of COVID, actually beginning of COVID, starting a new pottery business with no following.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I had an Instagram thing going and a little bit of a following, but not much.
Yeah, not enough to be a full-time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what was that first couple of months like?
I mean, we moved into a house. I needed to get it turned into a studio. I needed to start making pottery.
So how long does that take? Like from moving to I can finally do something. I can finally make something.
It can take about a week. It can take 2 months.
Okay.
I mean, depending on what you have, right? Like I had a studio pretty ready to go. The big thing I needed was electricity. So as neither of us have a job, but we're here trying to rent a house. So we have no proof of income. And we're trying to find a place to move into. But we're walking into rental houses and immediately saying, take us to the basement. Like, we don't care about what the house looks like.
Yeah.
We need to see if we can make pottery and try to make a living in this house.
Okay.
So you open up a panel box and it only has 100 amp service. Like, that's not going to work for my kiln. And so we had to find the house that we thought we could get a kiln connected to that had the space to make the pottery. And we got very lucky. We got a house that had a huge basement that walked out into a covered patio where my kilns were.
Oh, perfect.
And it really was awesome. So we found an electrician. He came in, put in the electricity, and I was making pots within the first 30 days, I'd say.
Okay. That feels pretty solid. I mean, that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Feels not bad.
And at that point, I had the gentleman with the hemp seeds. He was selling hemp seeds in quart ceramic containers that I was making for him.
Okay.
And so I thought I had a pretty steady job, but that unfortunately, I got set up and I called him and was like, I'm ready to make you more pots. He's like, that's not happening anymore. Things have changed. I'm doing it this way. And now we're selling hemp honey or CBD honey, and things just changed. So I lost kind of my only...
A recurring...
Exactly.
Okay. So how were you going to make it work? Like, what were you thinking at that point? Like, okay, you're finally set up. You can finally start making things. Wonderful. Okay, now I don't have my recurring, like, the thing that was going to at least get my feet, like, off the ground a little. Like, okay, that's now gone. What the hell was the plan? How were you... That feels like such a difficult, like, mental spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately I had my wife and we were a team, and we had saved enough money during the COVID first few months. I mean, when they were giving us paychecks, we just banked all of that.
Yeah.
And so we were set enough to not be, worried that we were going to lose everything.
Yeah.
And we had a decent savings. I mean, we wanted to buy a house. And so we had that money sitting on the side.
Yeah.
And so that was maybe the calming...
Yeah. It wasn't all going to fall apart. It was just like maybe plans are going to be pushed out a little bit. You're not going to be
kicked out onto the street if you don't sell pots. And so it gave me the time to practice my craft.
Okay.
I still wasn't sold at that point that I was making good enough pottery. I mean, I grew up around amazing pottery, and so I'm looking at what I'm making. I'm like, this doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really stoked to sell my pottery because I wasn't proud of it.
Yeah. I get that.
And meanwhile, people are like, this is beautiful. It's amazing. And I still don't, you're just being nice to me is in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was a tough game because I wasn't confident in the product I was producing. Meanwhile, I'm trying to sell it and create an income.
Huh. Okay. So how long had you been here? So you start selling things here. I'm sure a lot. Well, how were you selling at that point?
At that point, I was selling through an Etsy shop.
Okay.
On whatever I could drum up through business on Instagram.
Okay.
Which wasn't very much.
Okay.
My Christmas season that year was the best I'd ever done. And then it stopped in January. And I didn't have enough momentum and enough, all of those things to kind of keep going at that point. But I did keep making, and I kept trying. And I did, just fill up your site and hope to sell stuff. And at that point, I have enough friends around the United States that they're buying things.
Yeah.
I've...
Okay.
A large group of people I know have a piece or two of my pottery, and I'm very grateful for that. That helped me get over that hump to kind of selling to strangers. Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing that. At any point, did you, when things started to open back up, did you take a job back in restaurants at all, or were you able to?
I have not taken a job back in restaurants. I have been able to be supported by my wife while I continue this path on my own.
Okay. That's helpful. Okay, so...
When she started her business, I was working full-time with all of the benefits, and so there was kind of a...
Okay.
There wasn't any animosity at that point. It was like, you start this, and I've got it taken care of. And so...
Okay, that's cool.
That also helped with it, like, the yin and the yang of the whole thing, or the
that's cool.
Give and the take.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so you're starting to sell a little bit more. That's such a difficult time for you to try to do that. And you can't even go to all the things that people are typically doing well. Like, that's how they get their name out there.
Yeah.
So did you get pretty good at Instagram, or were you not that great?
I don't think I'm that great. I understand how it works. The payoff, the build-up, all of those things that trigger the dopamine in our mind. Like, I look enough at Instagram to realize what draws people's attention, at least what draws mine. And so I know that I should be creating things a specific way, but I'm not taking the time to do it. And I'm not making the sales. And then I'm not uploading the things onto my shop. I'm fighting myself in this business. Yeah. Is probably the biggest I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to just put my work out there because I wasn't proud of it.
Do you still deal with that?
It's getting a lot better.
Okay. What has helped that?
My confidence in the work that I'm making.
Okay. You just like it better.
I'm making. I've eliminated the flaws that I see are flaws. Like, pick up a piece of pottery, there's flaws all over them. Like, no matter who made it or what's going on, it's the ones you're willing to live with and the ones you're not willing to live with.
Yeah.
So I've been able to fine tune my work
in your mind.
In my mind, that it's workable.
Huh. That's such a. I'm better with it now, but the same thing with basically all of the things that I was doing, where it's like early on, it's like, I don't even want to sell this to people. Like, I finish a website, I finish a video, give it to them, they're happy, but I think this is trash. Like a week later, it's like, this sucks.
It could be so much better. Right.
How's anybody paying for this? Why would you do that? That's such a hard. I still deal with that. I don't know. It's weird because it's just because of that comparison. Like, you're comparing it to your parents' work, who had been doing it for how long?
Oh, I mean, decades.
Yeah. Like
it's at two separate points in their lives. Like, they honed in skills all over the place.
Yeah. That's but that also forces you to get better.
Very much so.
There's a fine balance there because you can take it too far where it's like, none of this is good, so I'm not going to sell any of it. And like, there's too far, but it also, it's a good thing to have. Like, you're just, because it forces you to want to do better.
Right. And that drive is good. I mean, making crappy products and selling them is not what I want to do.
Yeah. So you just brought that up again. So your parents they were doing pottery, got out of it for about 20 years. You have the same thing, like...
It's very strange.
It's very strange. Why did they get out of it? And, let's just start there. Because as I was reading through on your website, I was like, that's so... Both of you took this weird break where, like, it seems like you weren't doing anything with it, but there's this, like... It's kind of just in your blood, like, this is this thing that we're good at. Like, what caused them to stop?
To the best of my knowledge, they lived a life. It comes into religion.
Okay.
They got religious. They got saved. They got into the church, and the life that they had lived prior to that point, which carried a lot of the pottery, was not correspondent to the life they wanted to live now that they were saved.
So it was just this thing that was associated with that time.
Exactly. So it was a time point in their life that they wanted to kind of get away from.
Okay.
And so they started doing other things.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And for you, you were a kid when you were introduced to it. So
yeah, I just high school graduation and I stopped.
Yeah.
That was
Okay. It's weird that, that's just a weird thing. In your case, like, again, you were a kid, so you had it, you naturally had this ability, but after that, it was like, I'm going to do my own thing, and got to get convinced back into it. Okay, so you're here, it's, mid 2020 probably. You're selling some things. How, like, were you just using social media? Were you doing any paid ads? Like, how in the world did you make that? How did you not give up? That's that's actually maybe the question. Like, what you had, okay, let me, like, kind of set the way I'm looking at this. Okay, so you're not confident in your work. You have people telling you, they're paying for it. They're telling you it's good. You don't believe it. And you're in this time where you can't really sell things in the way that everybody else has been easily selling things. You can go to all the trade shows. You can go to all these things. You can't really do that. How in the world did you keep going? Like, you had to know there was something down, like, that you were good.
I think that there is that. I do know that I make a good piece of pottery.
Yeah.
I think I have a good eye for shape.
Uh-huh.
I have a good eye for functionality. And so I knew I was making good things.
Uh-huh.
They just weren't to the standard that I wanted them to be made.
Okay.
If that makes sense to people. And because of my food background, I wanted to make plates. I wanted to make bowls. I wanted to make things that you interact with, because eating is a celebratory thing in my mind, because that's what I did. I helped people celebrate through food my entire life. And so the idea of a cute little decanter that holds your wine that you pour into a cute little glass and they match, and that just makes your lunch on your patio that much better.
Yeah.
And so the drive was there. I don't think that I've hit my niche yet.
Yeah.
I think there's a particular type of ceramics that I'm eventually going to get into that will be my thing.
Okay.
But I don't think I found it yet. I don't know what that is. I think it has something to do with food and alcohol. Maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
Like I got into the beer festival, and I made all of these beer glasses and all of these beer growlers, and I was going to sell out. I was so stoked and excited, and I thought they were cool, and I love them, and I love this whole industry, so it was really going to be a great thing. Well, then I get to the beer thing, and I realize everyone's here just to drink. All of them say your stuff looks nice, but I don't want to carry this home because I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And then I've come to the realization that growlers are no longer cool, because every brewery has a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans. You can walk with the freshest beer in town, and it's not getting flat.
Yeah.
Your growler is already oxidized.
Yeah.
It's getting worse the further away from the brewery you take it.
Yeah.
And so there's just no longer that sales. And so I had, 50 growlers at one point that I was hoping that I was planning to sell in one weekend. I still have them. They're still in my studio now. Not all of them. I've slowly gotten rid of them. I've kind of changed the sales pitch. I'm selling them as whiskey infinity jars.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that whole thing.
Yeah. So, spatula whiskey.
Exactly. So it's a fun twist. I'm constantly moving things around and doing things different ways. But so what I think pushed me, though, from not quitting was that I had the knowledge that I could make better things. Okay. And I still had the time and freedom to do so. Okay. My amazing wife was helping me take care of the bills. Yeah. She's supported me through and through. She's my driving force in this. Yeah. And so in July of 21, I did my first in-person market. Okay. Market Square, downtown Pittsburgh, drive-in, set up. And turns out everyone was cooped up for a bunch of time, and they wanted to come out. And they wanted to buy things. And so I did really well. And that helped get over, is it good enough? Yeah. People are going to hate it. They're going to throw it on the ground and say it's not worth what I'm asking. It really got to that point where I was like, oh, people are stoked to take this with them. Yeah. And are telling me that I'm not charging enough money for it. It really started to change the perspective in my mind. And then seeing what sold, that really drives what I was making. If I sold 20 of those this weekend, I'm going to bring 40 of them and try to play that game. And so that in-person interaction that I had been missing for over a year at that point also helped keep me going. Okay. And then I had signed up for a bunch of shows, so then I needed to make more pottery to have it for those. And so there was this once I got to doing shows, I had pushed that little wheel over the edge, and I was rolling downhill at that point. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That had to have been but I mean, that's I'm thinking about it from my mind. It's that's a difficult, getting to that point would be difficult. Especially when you're dealing with this, my stuff isn't good enough thing. Because it's good. It's weird because it's good, but also it's just not as good as what it can be. Right. And I was fortunate that I didn't have I'm not good enough going on in my mind.
Yeah.
Right? I knew I had the skill set.
Yeah.
I just needed to practice more.
That's a very that's interesting. Like the way you just said. So it wasn't that you weren't good enough. It's just that like I know I can do I know my things can be better. I know I have it. Like I can do it. I can see it. I know I have the ability to. It's just not there yet. Mm-hmm. Which is way different. That is a way more positive look than like I'm not good enough on.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that was
Yeah.
the case, and I think I can do a lot of things. I'm pretty confident in my ability.
Yeah.
Of most things. I mean, I'll dive in and try it.
Yeah. Okay, so through that. Okay, so at that point you had already been selling as a side project before that. On the business side of things. Has there been anything you said you weren't really involved as a kid, like you didn't see any of that side of it. Is there any of that has been a struggle in the like doing this more full time?
I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but I also am not the neatest and organized individual. Uh-huh. I store a lot of information in my head and draw it out when I need it. Which isn't the best way to run a business. Yeah. You did that special on your bank accounts and just dividing things out like that and being able to click and have it all be separated is a wonderful gift. And so I've slowly been inching that way. Yeah. You know, it drives my wife, who's an engineer, nuts. Like, what do you mean you like... I'm like, well, it's in here. Let me figure it out and I'll crunch some numbers and here's what I do. Here it is. So I just last week I signed up. I now have QuickBooks going on, and our accountant she's a little busy with taxes right now, but come the end of April, she'll get me dialed in on that to where I've got invoice capabilities and everything is located in one spot. Yeah. The advantage you have with Pottery is that you're dealing with dirt, and it fortunately costs what dirt costs. So your overhead cost isn't a lot, right? I'm not buying platinum to melt down and make something. Yeah. I'm really using my skill set to upgrade the price of what I have. Gotcha.
Is the equipment, like, do you frequently have to replace that, or is it kind of like it lasts a good while?
It lasts a good while. I mean, the Pottery wheel that I'm using is my mother's, and it was 25 years old when I got it. Okay. I had the electric motor rebuilt. Not that it needed it at the time, but I was like, I'd like this to live another 25 years. So I took it to a place and had them, rebuild it, and they promised me that if this thing breaks down before the rest of my wheel does, to bring it back. Yeah, so cool. We'll see how that goes. The kilns, I use electric kilns. So there's, you can fire a wood kiln. There's a gas kiln. I use electric coils. One, it's a little bit cleaner. Okay. A little bit easier for me to do because I'm in a basement. I don't have a big smokestack that I can keep enough wood and fire and those types of things. And so the heating elements burn out over time. I mean, you're getting to 2,200 degrees. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure going on inside there. And then, there's little mechanisms that stick in there that turn it off when it gets to the right temperature. It's just a weighted lever system and a little bar that melts at the right temperature. And so it causes it to turn off. Well, those pieces... That's cool. Over the course of 2 years, melt. Okay. I also have an old kiln. New ones are all digitized and have coupling sensors that tell it when it's hot enough. Yeah. I like this older way a little bit more.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So I in fact need to replace some pieces in my kiln. Okay, now.
But generally it's like it's not things that need. There's not a ton of, like you said, there's not a ton of those things that need to constantly be purchased, like new things that are purchased.
Right. I mean, just clay. Yeah. Clay and glaze is what I'm buying. I have the tools. I've been fortunate enough my parents are completely retired from ceramics now, so I got all of their tools and knickknacks, and I have more tools and knickknacks than I'll go through in the next 20 years, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so the business side, Now you've got QuickBooks. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That'll add a nice little wrinkle to your operation. Was there anything else? I guess, yeah, I mean, the like pricing wise or anything like that, how was any of that a struggle? You mentioned the like people saying you're not charging enough. How were you have you had any struggles with figuring out pricing, and how do you think through that?
I try to,
because it feels like a difficult, like when it's something that you're spending a ton of time on, and really, like you said, like that's the thing. It's like I'm pricing my skill, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're dealing with this stuff is not as good as I want to be, like I feel like that could be
You're pulling at two sides. It's a tug of war there. It is, because for one, I mean, I could make an equation that says the clay costs this, it takes me this long to do this, and when I fire it costs this, and so at the end it needs to cost this.
Yeah.
And then every piece could fall into that thing.
Yeah.
I don't play that game because I just haven't gotten there yet. It would probably make it a lot easier on my brain if I did do that, now that I say it out loud. But the way I'm fighting it is how long is it taking me to make this? You know, I've worked how many hours this week? At the end, I have this much product. If I sell it all, will I have X amount of dollars? Meanwhile, I'm like, well, I know this is worth $60, but I'll just charge $40 because I don't want someone to tell me this is garbage, you're charging too much. That would hurt. That would actually hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I do my best to not do that. But then I look at other people selling pottery and I see them charge $200 for the item that I know exactly what work they went into that.
Yeah.
I know what they've done. I get it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's worth that, but they do, and they get that.
Yeah.
So it's a fun game that I'm playing with my own mind, I guess. How fun it really is, I don't think it's all that fun, but
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm trying to produce a quality product, and I want someone to feel like they got a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the way that you're like it's come up a couple times where you want people to use them. Like you want it to be a part of your life. So it's like, okay, could you charge $400 for the thing? It's like, well, sure. If you do the right branding, like a pair of Nikes is probably not worth $200 because you can get the same shoe for $40.
Yeah.
But that's the game that they've put themselves into that category. You could do the same thing with your stuff, but then it's like, if you want people to use it?
Yeah.
Everybody's not going to get a $200 plate because then I need 4 of them or 6 of them. It's like, well, I want to use this every day. And then it becomes this thing that sits in the closet. And it's like, oh, well, we look at this during the holidays and say it's special. It's like, well, no, we want this thing to be used.
Break it out. And if it breaks, I can go get another one.
Yeah. But even at that, it still puts you, like, you're in this weird, that weird, like, mental game that you got to work through. And I'm sure, like, do the equations work? I'm sure it would at least help to alleviate some of the questioning of yourself.
Yeah, when someone comes at you with, I want a deal on this, and you're like, here's why it costs what it does.
Yeah. It's like removing the burden of you being the bad guy. It's like, no, the equation's the bad guy.
Precisely, yeah. I'm just trying to make a living here.
Yeah.
And if you can't be part of that equation, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah, that's helped me a lot. The setting up rules. Actually, this was a Tim Ferriss thing that I was listening to him like last year or something. It was like he made this. People were asking him for book requests, and it was like, no, there's just a rule that I follow this year that like I'm not doing any new book reviews, and then it removes you from the equation. It's just like, no, this is the rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love
it's
you.
Not on me.
I care about you. I want to support you, but I can't break my own rule.
Yeah.
That would belittle myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird that just that little like mental trick can help, but it's just like, okay, I can't feel like the bad guy, so I just need to push it up. Did I create the rule? I sure did.
Yeah.
But it's the
That's
rules'
not keeping
fault.
me up at night, right?
Yeah, it's the rules' fault. Yeah, it's like figuring out how to do. But like in your case, it's if you can figure out, even if it's what I've learned with a lot of these things. It's like once you figure out, okay, so you just talk through this equation thing. It's like, okay, could that work? Yeah, maybe let's try it for one thing. It's like, okay, people are bitching about the cups. Okay, there's a rule. Like this is why. Let me at least get this in my head so that I know this is. Whatever, if people are saying it's too cheap or too expensive or whatever it is, it's like, okay, let me remove the strain on myself and let's just figure out, am I actually thinking about the pricing of this cup right? Yes? Okay, cool. Burden gone.
Yeah.
It's off my mind now. It's those little mental games you got to play with yourself as a
It is.
as a creator of things.
It's a weird game sleeping at night.
Yeah. Okay, so that's fun for you to work through. As anything else that has come up on the business side that is maybe either a challenge or a sticking point for you, or like, yeah, I mean, how long have you been doing it full time now? I guess getting in 3 years.
Going in 3 years, yeah.
Okay. So in a very similar position to a lot of the people that have been on recently, which is this like started kind of during COVID and now we're figuring it out back in the like I imagine once you were able to start going to shows more, sales jumped way up.
Right.
Have you been able to sustain that, and how are you thinking about that now that everyone's kind of normalizing and the joy of being back out is kind of like, now we're back to normal.
Yeah. It's, I mean, definitely, as you say, getting to those shows, it all jumped. Mm-hmm. And I did a full year of them last year, and now I'm applying for them for a second and some a third time, and so I know what to expect at those things. But what it's really come down to is that those things only happen certain times of year. Mm-hmm. January, people aren't going out and buying things.
Yeah.
So I need to kind of get a hybrid system that kind of allows me to create and take them out into the public because I really enjoy that part of the sales. I don't want to be behind an Etsy account 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But I also need to have that running in the background 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So that people know that in January, if they need a gift for someone's birthday or they need something, they can go there and get those types of things. So my business is starting to pan in different directions.
Yeah.
At first, it was like, just sell the pottery.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, where do I want to sell the pottery?
Yeah.
And so I don't have my pottery in any stores. I need to figure out a retail system.
Okay.
But I've been selling it as fast as I make it. And so it's tough to get ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure those, the events are all kind of like bulk days almost, where it's like you're going to sell a ton of them on those days. And then that's all of your stock. So now you got to re-up. And
Exactly.
Like, how do you get ahead? I guess during the slower, like, is post-Christmas to probably like now-ish, like, is that generally, I feel like most people are slow during this time. So
I think so.
Are you able to, I guess you just moved, so you haven't been able to use that as like a re-up.
Right.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Okay. So,
yeah, well,
okay.
that was also the weird thing. We bought our house in October, or I guess Halloween we closed. And so it just sat there until January because I was busy doing shows.
Oh.
And so then Christmas came, I shut down my studio, and then we moved. But in that time frame, I made a couple wholesale orders. And so I had to get set back up and get those going.
Okay. So when you're thinking about trying to get into some more frequent retailer, like so you mentioned that, but is that something you've been working towards, or it's just something you're kind of thinking about how that can work?
I've worked a little bit towards it with some items. That's really fought me with the confidence in my own work, though. Because I talk to these shops that are willing to take my things, but I'm not getting, I want this and this and this. It's like, bring some stuff and we'll see what's going. And so I need to really kind of narrow in what I'm taking into a place to try to get on the shelf. You know, I need to take mugs to a coffee shop and be their mug guy, right?
Yeah.
Or I need to get into a place that makes canister jars because they sell spices or you know, olive oil pours in a place that sells olive oil. But it just was so wide that I couldn't grasp what they wanted, and then I would get, you know, kind of frozen in my making, and then get behind, and then I had to get to my next show. And so it's been hard because people say, yes, your stuff is beautiful, just bring me some stuff. And then I'm like,
but I have so many things.
Yeah, I don't know what to bring to you. I don't know what to sell. I don't know what's going to work.
Yeah.
And so talking to my father about it, which has been great because we've been able to discuss how he did it and what went on. And as he said, you get a couple places, put stuff in it, and then go check on them once a week. See what's selling. Take the stuff that's not selling and give them more of the stuff that is, because the stuff that's not selling might be selling at someone else's place. And it's just a matter of doing, right? Like that's...
Well, to me, and like, it seems like you're at least somewhat similar in this. It's like doing it, but also figuring out like a process to follow for those things. And then again, it's like, I don't have to store it all here now. I just know, okay, I have these, okay, I want a new retailer. Okay, what are the things that I like doing? The oil pot, like those are cool. Okay, I enjoy those. Let's find a couple of these places. I stop in there once a week. I do this, I do this, I do this. Okay, process complete.
Right.
Because if you're not in that, like if you're just going to random mom and pop store, it's like, oh, well, you've told me you want stuff, but I can't, there's too many things.
Yeah.
What do I do? Like, what do I do here?
Right.
What do I do? There's too many options. I love all of these things. What am I supposed to do? But like just thinking through how, or like, what do you enjoy making, or what places do you enjoy going? Like that could be kind of a fun way to do it. When I started doing video, that's how I approached it, which was like, what things do I want to make videos for? Let me go to those people and just see if I can do video for them. Okay, I like going to these places. I like this restaurant. Wonder if I can make plates for that restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah. So you're thinking through that and how you can get into any of those. When you're thinking about the production of that, like, I guess, do you have the capacity, like, do you have an idea of how much you can produce weekly for certain things, or?
I have a very vague idea.
Yeah.
If I really turned it on, I think I could, I believe I can make more than I probably can. Okay. In all reality, things take longer than I imagine they're going to. Okay.
Okay, so getting into some type of wholesale or some type of retail situation, and then you're also trying to start pushing the both online and okay, so once events open back up, were you doing a lot of online sales at that point, or had everything kind of converted over?
It all kind of converted over because I didn't have enough stuff to have an inventory for online and an inventory to carry to shows.
Yeah.
It was just one inventory. And I was really worried about selling something online and selling something at the same time and not having it.
Yeah.
I know it's happened a couple times. Fortunately, it's generally been with people I know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel good. You know, you're trying to run a business. I'm about the yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to start not trying to even it out, but get a little bit more even-ish there, or at least start pushing the online more, because then you can grow your reach. You can start to get some of those types of, and during those slow months, now you have an outlet for just continuing to sell your things. Okay, so how are you thinking through, like, what's the plan for that? How are you going to do that?
My goal is this year to have those two separate inventories. That there is a online inventory in my basement that works like a warehouse shipping department, and then there's my marketing or my other thing, and really just let them coexist.
Okay.
Because I get a lot of traffic. You know, people love to watch a well put together reel of someone making a piece of pottery.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah, and if you can go from the lump of clay all the way to that finished pot that's glazed and it pouring syrup on pancakes or whatever it may be, like that kills, and people will go to your link and buy that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I just sold all of my little herb stripper bowls in 2 hours the other day because somebody, I don't know who it was, told their group, look at this.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I looked up and they were all gone. It was like, well,
what just happened?
Yeah, now I need more. and I need to figure that out.
Yeah.
So I know that I need to have satisfying videos. But it's very tough for me to make them. I know what I want to do, but I'm shooting with the cell phone of myself making this and then editing it on my cell phone and not making pots. And so I get to the point where I've now wasted too much time trying to do it that I have to put it aside so that I can make pots to get to this thing. And so it's just a battle of my time at this point. But I've gotten a little bit better. Like I said, I got a GoPro. It's in a handy little case that can get dirty. So with my muddy clay hands, I can press play, record. And so I started a secondary Instagram account that's just time lapses of me throwing. So that will hopefully, if someone wants to, go get off on that for a few hours, I've got hopefully 400 videos in the next couple of years ready for that. Yeah. I think I'm at 10 right now, but it'll add up.
Yeah.
But playing that game, the satisfying, I want that game that quickly clicks on the internet is how I plan to drive my internet sales.
And are you going to continue? You're just on Etsy, right? Is that where you sell everything through?
Yeah, they take care of the state sales taxes in all of the places, which is a rather tedious thing. Yeah. They spend a lot of money to make their shipping carbon neutral. And so I like what they're doing. It costs me more. I could save more money if I went and got my own site. Yeah. But I would have to do a lot more things.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always, it's kind of weird because you use something like that, you're going to make a little bit less, but people are going to those platforms. Right. They're going to those platforms looking for whatever. In your case, pottery of sorts. Yeah. Where if you have your own site, you have to be bringing them. Now, the one thing is it doesn't have to be either or, because you could exist on there and also have your own where like Instagram links to there instead of the thing on Etsy. And then you can remove some of that middleman cost, but then you've got all of the other things you have to deal with. Yeah. So, that's eventually, you probably get to that point where it's like, let's just go to my own thing.
At some point, my income gets higher than that, and it becomes easier to do it that way, right? Yeah. Or I hire someone to take care of those things. I mean, that's kind of where it's at now. I've hired Etsy. Yeah, yeah. Those are that, or some people are using like eBay. All of those platforms, like they're pretty solid for a while. Yeah. Until you get to a point where you can manage all of those things, they make it so simple. Again, you're going to pay for the convenience, but it's convenient. Right. And like you're trying to come up with the time to make all of these things that take a while and manage the business and go to the events and make the videos. Like, okay, I don't want to have to worry about the sales tax stuff. I don't want to have to worry about managing the website. Okay. Yeah. Etsy, you got me. Thanks, man. Thank you. Exactly.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. And I like what you're doing. So, benefit. Okay, so is there anything? We've covered a lot of the business, the things that I imagined we would get to. Is there anything that we haven't covered that that are either sticking points for you or struggles that you've kind of had through the business? Like, I mean, you started during such a weird, like a weird time, but also such a weird circumstance where you moved back across the country to an area that you don't know anybody, and now you're trying to sell things that would be way easier to sell in person. But I mean, fortunately, you've got some friends, and before you moved, what were you making? Like, were you selling the same things when you started back here, or?
I was making bowls and mugs.
Okay.
You know, there are potters out there that sell just mugs and make great livings doing so.
Yeah,
And so
everyone loves a nice mug.
You know, right.
I've got so many of them. Every time I see them, I'm like, oh, I need another one. I've finally gotten to a point where it's like I've started getting different types of drinkware instead of just mugs. Because mugs, I feel like there aren't a lot of things I like drinking out of mugs other than like coffee or tea.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I found like I think we were in Portland actually I was in Utah last year, and I got a Glencairn, but ceramic.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. All right, let's start looking at those types of things, because those are kind of fun to drink out of too. And yeah, sorry, a little aside there, but,
exactly.
Okay.
So I was doing that, but I'd also, the gentleman with the seats, right? I was waiting his table in the restaurant that he came in and explained that I made pottery, and then showed him pictures, and then he's like, well, I'll take $4,000 worth. Right? So then I designed these jars with corks for the lids for him, and he says they're perfect. You know, that's exactly what I want. And so I sell him the first $4,000. He's like, I want another $4,000 worth.
Okay.
And so that was what I was making.
Okay, but so you were back, like you were in the rhythm at that point. You weren't like relearning. You were past that relearning phase, is what or like what am I looking for? Like getting
refining, I think is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like I learned the skill, but I've just been refining it to a level that I'm happy with and proud of. But at that point, I was still missing some things, but they were basic shapes. You know, it's a little quart-sized jar. Anyone can make those.
Yeah. Anyone can make those. Okay. Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to touch on?
I don't think so. We've kind of gone through.
How
I got here and what I'm doing about it.
Yeah. Okay. Where can the humans of planet Earth, or wherever else, where can we find all of your things?
The best place to start is my website, bcramerclay.com. Cramer,
it'll be linked below.
It'll be linked, yep, Cramer. Through that, you can get to my Etsy shop and purchase things. It is not there yet, but I have a plan in the next couple weeks to have a calendar added to my website so that you'll know where I'll be at in-person marketing. If you want to come talk to me about ceramics or come check it out and pick them up, that's the place to be. So here in Washington County, I have done the Covered Bridge Festival the last 2 years. Really enjoyed that. I think I'm going to do that again this year. I have not technically signed up for it yet or been accepted, but I'll probably be there. And where do I have one? Very close here. May 7th. Sunday, May 7th. Oh, man, I should know the answer to this. I'm going to pull my phone out and look at the answer to this.
Yeah. All of those will be linked down below. How about your Instagram?
Instagram is Cramer Clay as well.
Okay.
I try to keep them all as close as possible to each other so that it's not too different.
Yes.
If you're interested in those time lapses, I am Mud Squeezer.
Mud Squeezer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to, when I teach people to make pottery, I really focus on the squeezing that we're doing.
Do you do that a lot? Do you teach?
I don't do it a lot.
Okay.
I do it a little bit. It's something that everyone always asks me if I do, and so I'm constantly, when I'm making pottery, working on a curriculum of how I'm going to explain what I'm doing to someone who wants to do it. Because I would like to get a studio that I could then have classes in. You know? 10 wheels, bring people in.
That's something I know our friend group has talked about so many times, and I haven't really found anywhere that I'm sure there are places in Pittsburgh, but I haven't found them. Because we were all like, "Oh, this would be really cool to make." I talked to you about it actually. Some type of an ashtray, and then the more I looked into it, I was like, "I'm not gonna learn to do this in a day. Like, what am I? I'm an idiot. Like, what the hell? What do I think this is? Like, but that would be cool. Do you anticipate that being something that you're going to do like near future, like year or two, or further down the road, or how are you thinking about that?
At this point, I would like it to be a couple years down the road, between 2 and 5.
Okay.
I maybe closer to the 2.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that I would like to create a little bit of a environment around and a community around.
Yeah.
And we've just moved to the North Shore, and I think that community could go for that and it would be useful. So I wasn't sure that I wanted to do this until just recently, but I think it would be a place that I would really enjoy, you know?
Yeah.
And so teaching classes, helping people, and then just kind of lower my production of work to being more of a special release type of thing.
Okay.
Where more of my income is coming from the classes and that type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. That would be cool. Okay. Did you find your event?
I did. It is the Lux Market. It is May 7th, and it is at the company Stables, which is a wedding event in Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
If you follow me on Instagram or get to my calendar when that is on my website, there will be links to that.
Okay.
I keep both my Instagram, Facebook, which is also B Cramer Clay as well. Once I've got shows and coming up, I like to give a monthly post that shows where I'll be for the month, and then weekly in my stories.
Gotcha.
I'm constantly letting people know where I'll be at and things of that. So you can always get a hold of me, send me an email, find my website, or if you want to come find me in person, I'm selling pottery a lot.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is fun. Okay. Thank you for watching and listening. If you have any suggestions for guests that you would like to see on, let me know. If you got anything from this episode, if you enjoyed this episode, share it, comment, leave a review on the podcast. Those are all things that are super helpful. Visit all of his links down below. Stuff's great. He's a wonderful person. Check him out. Thanks for listening. Have a marvelous week, and see you next time. Thanks.